right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Hunter Willis, and you are watching FinOps Fridays. Today, we have Idaliz Baez on the line with us. Thanks for joining us today. She is an experienced FinOps trainer with over a decade of formal training, getting organizations onboarded with FinOps, getting them going with FinOps, and helping them mature it in their organizations. So, Idaliz, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hello. So I was kind of reflecting on where my journey started before joining this podcast. Thank you for having me. And I realized that it actually started sort of back in the technology business management world. For those of you that are very familiar with Aptio, now IBM, that kind of journey, I actually worked at Aptio. A lifetime ago, it feels like. And from there, I did a couple of other IT pre-sales engineering kind of roles, and then wrapped into getting certified as a FinOps practitioner. And then I was lucky enough to be part of the beta group for the certification for FinOps professionals and helped kind of create that. So if you are new to the FinOps community and you are now looking at this whole FinOps framework with domains and capabilities, just know that actually ages ago, this was still being built and was still being created as we were learning how to manage our cloud spend and kind of remedy that with that traditional IT world. So yeah, that's my background.
Yeah, awesome. And as we were talking and the ramp up to this conversation, realized that I have two daughters and you now have two daughters.
I
Congratulations.
do. Thank you. Yes, for those of you that do not know, I'm sorry I kept this one quiet. Her name is Zoe, and yeah, she's lovely. So now I have two wonderfully rambunctious daughters.
It's so great. It's so great, man. I love being a dad of daughters. It's fantastic. And again, thank you so much for coming on today. Really looking forward to this conversation. There are a ton of different approaches. And your primary role right now, what you're doing is helping organizations kind of onboard with FinOps or different teams within organizations onboard to an existing practice and helping them facilitate that. I also know that you are really passionate about helping teams within organizations evangelize FinOps to their stakeholders and to different business units and things like that. So talk to us about kind of how you get started with a variety of approaches with these organizations and like what does that look like when you're really starting into kind of creating that formal FinOps functions for different kinds of organizations? I'm sure there's a lot of variance in there based on size and industry and where they are, maturity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my initial approach is always to gather as much information as possible, obviously, as much as an organization is willing to share. Because the more transparency you can have, especially with the people that are the driving forces behind wanting to create a FinOps function, whether it's from the informal aspect or whether they actually have funding behind it and it's a really formal initiative, understanding where the knowledge and where, what background and mindset an organization already has is really crucial to then being able to decide what is going to be the most effective approach. Because exactly like you said, different organizations are going to want to approach things in a different way. Even if you say, hey, this is what I've experienced as the most successful, that doesn't mean that's going to be approved. So what I have found is for the organizations where it's much more informal, they maybe don't necessarily have funding yet, and it's kind of coming from somebody not at the executive level of leadership trying to kind of get this FinOps fire going. What I've found is just being able to try and start with like smaller introductory, I'm going to educate um, like cross-discipline people. And because the reason for that is because FinOps personas really can take a variety of skill sets and across different disciplines within an organization. So if you can reach out to maybe a few people that are really influential across a couple of teams that will be able to kind of pull those levers of FinOps, then you'll be able to start to spread the word organically. And then hopefully you can then start to say, okay, look, we have a really big desire, a big backing for this. We're starting to see the impact. And then you can really kind of grow it from there. One of the biggest things for me is to make sure that any collateral that you end up creating or that you want people to read and share is in a place where people go to frequently and often. So, for example, you have somebody in the organization that says, okay, the way that we currently do chargeback and showback, that's it. We're not going to change it. Even if that's the case, that doesn't mean that you can't, for example, start to create like temporary dashboards, or like the, hey, if we did it in a different way, it's kind of like that idea of, hey, I'm gonna kind of show you a few other options. Let me also put it in the same place that you look at every single day, right? Like, for example, in the morning, I have my morning routine. If I haven't slept well, I will make my coffee. I will check my Outlook emails. I will, people have their routines of what they check. If you're an engineer, you're looking at Jira all the time if you use that, or if you're using Slack a lot internally, or if you're a Microsoft Teams person, right? Like, you have those places that are kind of like your home base. And my highest recommendation for being able to really communicate, either, either, hey, we need to be taking action, or, oh, hey, this might be a good idea. Let's kind of draft this and see if this can take initiative on the next quarter or the next, whatever we're doing. Would be to place it somewhere where people will see it. Yeah. So even if it is not, even if there's a full on no, and you think it's a no, that doesn't mean that you can't say, hey, well, I'm just gonna place this here for you to just look at. Like,
I like that. It's not Sherback, it's budget optimization goals, right? It's a totally different. That's not Showback. No, 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 no. Showback, not here. Just visibility. That's all it is, right? Exactly.
I don't to realize how that could come off like sly FinOps ninja. Like, just
No, but I have seen just every conversation I've ever had on this topic when we talk about the visualization, the surfacing information, etc. It's like it's crucial because
yeah.
the business units that are consuming cloud, especially when we're talking about AI and the cost jump that causes with cloud resources and the demand for it for different teams and departments, they have no idea how much it's costing them. And if you don't show them and then show them why and how, they don't know, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's just, there are so many things that you can then improve upon from there. So even just like, for example, then being able to see, what does my data quality look like? So you even said, just like, even understanding a number is one thing, but understanding it in the context of what does it entail, and then how can we actually act upon that? Is the number going up a good thing? Is it a neutral? Is it, negative? I feel as if a lot of times, some it's really easy to get caught up in, say, the magnitude of a number without actually realizing, well, maybe we wanted that number to go up.
No, and some of my favorite conversations about all of this have been around organizational change management and principles of collaboration, and how a lot of times when people are going through a FinOps implementation, they kind of forget that the ability to deploy something or implement a program, there are separate practices that exist for that stuff that need to be applied here. And they're looking at FinOps and they're focusing on FinOps, but they kind of forget that, like, hey, this is the same kind of process as like a program manager would take to implement a
Exactly.
program, right?
Exactly. And I think that that's important that you say that, because another nice example would be when I've helped organizations onboard FinOps that are very heavily ITAM focused. And I think it's great that now we have this kind of intersecting of disciplines, kind of collateral within the FinOps community, because ITAM and FinOps have, they have a strong synergy. And I really appreciated being able to learn from people that have been experts in the ITAM field, and then being able to introduce FinOps to them, and then see the looks on their faces when they're like, oh, I get it. That is very similar to what I've done here. And then to just kind of spark those conversations. And that way you are fostering that collaboration in a way that it makes it easy, instead of having to kind of push water up a hill and make it difficult, and just kind of say, hey, here's a list of words and acronyms. You memorize it and learn it yourself, instead of kind of coming to meet people where, the language that they're already familiar with. It's more helpful.
And when we talked to Sean about the focus specification and some of the conversations that I've had with some other people in the FinOps world, and again talking to different organizations that have implemented it, there's also this persona of kind of the data warehouse people that is where it's kind of where the rubber meets the road when it comes to taxonomy and the tagging and everything that's going on with the IT asset management and the other things that are happening with FinOps, and like the what and the why of so much of this stuff. And
Hmm.
also, again, where the data is stored, right? And
Yes.
a lot of times people just completely leave them out of this, of everything that's going on. And they turn around and the way everything is structured has changed, and they're like, "Hey," you know,
I have a soft spot for anybody that brings up, data warehouses or databases because my first kind of foray into the IT world was at a database connectivity company. And, so yes, and the language for every single database, whether it's big data, normalized data, JSON data, all of that. I mean, everything comes down to it, and they have their own, like you said, taxonomies for each one and querying that data and the costs behind it. And yeah, that that is absolutely a persona or a group of people that hopefully don't get left out of these conversations because they hold the keys to some very expensive resources within our IT world.
yeah, and
Yeah.
with data lakes and AI, that process and the quality of a query can, you know, it's kinda like Kubernetes has already kind of surfaced the quality of kind of how we're interacting with the technology and how that can expound costs, but when you talk about AI and data lakes, it's at a whole 'nother level, you know,
Yes,
of like,
because the
oof,
time it ta oh, the time it takes. I used to, so I remember I used to help, like, troubleshoot or try and optimize certain queries for different databases, and literally just do, like, performance testings where you'd be like, "Okay, let's see how this database does trying to extract this type of information. How quickly can we do it? How quickly can we surface it? Can we, can we put, like, what can we do to make it better?" And I specifically remember hitting memory issues or, you when you really get to that point where you realize, okay, this is reams and reams of data is probably going to be costing a fortune if I'm running this all of the time, or if I'm breaking things because I'm taking too long to query information. And yeah, that we have a problem.
and so that's I almost feel like as we move forward with AI, that we need to be talking about the quality of data queries and the quality of data more because it's gonna dramatically impact costing when something is sitting there processing and can't, complete a query. It's like, that's using resources to do that, right?
Absolutely, and the
So
worst bit is when somebody if you don't think about it, if you just kind of go, "Oh, this query will work," and then you just leave it and you forget it, and if it breaks or if it brings back information, but like you said, the quality, it brings back the incorrect information or brings back so much information that is not useful, then, those are all things that can not only be costly from a monetary perspective, but from a time perspective, which I is massive for performance and uh, for for just kind of customer satisfaction. So, yeah.
okay, and so to bring us back out of the weeds on this topic, which has been amazing, by the way, this is great. The other thing I wanted to touch on is like unit economics, is like
Yes.
organizations across the board. It feels like that's kind of the holy grail of where organizations want to go, being able to have a value metric associated with the optimization of costs.
Yeah, it used to be called I remember it used to be called FinOps Nirvana. And yeah, and so for unit economics, what I really love is that there is now that library of kind of metrics and that you can find within the FinOps.org website, which I think is great. And it's so helpful to be able to find a place where there are examples that are given for how can I create unit metrics? How can I like maybe, the other thing that I always think about is that quote of when given a number, ask for another number, because that's kind of the whole basis behind, hey, if I want to have unit metrics and unit economics, like what am I looking at? What does that even mean? What is the health of this measurement? And how is it meaningful to my business? And I think that being able to take a look at other examples that are already made publicly available is one of the easiest starting points for organizations that haven't started to kind of measure themselves in that way. So I always recommend, hey, don't try and invent the wheel if you don't have to. Within an organization, I always say, hey, here's what I have found that has been successful. It's already, publicly available as examples for what other organizations have done. If any of these things apply to you, great. Take that, start using that calculation and start looking at what does that look like internally on a day-to-day basis for your organization. If none of them apply to you, then maybe at least you can look at it and say, "Okay, I've got something tangential that might work that I can kind of tailor and taper." But at least then you're not looking at a blank screen because I have had writer's blocks days where you just are looking at that blank screen and you just sometimes it's nice to have something to reference to help get you started.
Sure. Yeah, there's so much to do. It's hard to know what to like, where to hit the hammer on any given day. It's a lot. Well, Idaliz, this has been an amazing conversation. I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything like any advice or any other topics that you want to dive into really quick before we start to wrap things up? Is there anything else that you have as like a passion topic that you want to talk about before we kind of spin down here?
Maybe I'm bringing this up because it's top of mind at the moment because I just went through the recertification process, but I would say that I'm just really proud of anybody that has gone through the FinOps Professional certification, and I just want to give each and every person that has done that just kind of a quick little round of applause and a well done, you did it. Or if you're working towards your certification because you were part of that first cohort, I just want to tell you you can do it. Just give you some confidence. But yeah, I would say that as far as discussing more things, I think I'm really passionate about just also career growth. Because I don't always see myself as a mentor in my career. Sometimes I always am still kind of looking for mentors. But I have had the privilege of some kind of more junior people in their careers reach out to me for advice or for mentorship. And I may not always have as much time as I wish I used to now that I'm a mom of 2, but I do always appreciate anybody that reaches out for advice, and I'm always happy to help, and if I can't help, I'm happy to hopefully share with other people in the community that I know are also happy to help because I think that, everybody goes through their own career journey, and I think it behooves us all to kinda support each other through it, so
Yeah,
something
and
I'm passionate.
thank you for being so active in the community. I know that you're, on, like, the Three Keys webcast with Steph Gooch there. You did an episode with that, and you've done, good presentations with the FinOps Foundation, so, people look out for Italy's content out there. Definitely, check out some of those sessions and some of those other conversations that she's had, and, also great posts on LinkedIn too. A lot of good advice, a lot of good link sharing and stuff like that there, so thanks for being so active with all of that. Um yeah, and just, before we sign off, is there anything else that you wanna say? And just really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I think I'm all set. I just wanna say thank you. This has been really fun. I've really enjoyed it, and, yeah, I appreciate being able to chat about some of these topics that I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely, for sure, and folks, definitely don't forget to check out, the learn.finops.org as referenced, and, so much of the content, some of the information and resources that we've referenced today at finops.org. Definitely, if you haven't refreshed yourself on the framework or checked out the latest framework as well as what's going on with the Focus Foundation, definitely recommend you check that out. And also, from, the IBM Cloudability side, our FinOps team, we've released an ebook on the FinOps, maturity capabilities and kind of how to strategically understand kind of moving the maturity for capabilities forward and some recommendations around that as well, because we find that like when you're talking about the phases of FinOps and the different capabilities and the maturity at the capability level for FinOps, it can kind of get confusing. How do you strategize that? There's also a really great presentation from FinOps X last year, not this past year, but from 2024 that dives into that as well. So check out that content. It really dives into some of the concepts that we've talked about today. Everybody, Eliz, thank you again. And everybody, thanks for your time today. Take care and hope you enjoy the episode.
Cheers.